Welcome to Hey Soul Sista, the podcast for women ready to embrace greater joy, freedom, and a soulful life. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, follow, like, and share. Hey Soul Sisters. Many women I speak to are capable, thoughtful, and doing all the good things, yet still feel stuck. Stuck in patterns they've outgrown, stuck in stories that once kept them safe, but now quietly limit them, and often stuck while still looking totally fine on the outside. So my guest today works exactly in this space. Suzy Jacobs is a coach, speaker, and the founder of Bold Mind Moves. And for over a decade, she's worked with ambitious women, leaders, and creatives who are outwardly successful, but inwardly stuck, helping them to shift their inner lens so that they can think, live, and lead more boldly. And today, we're talking about how we get stuck, the stories we tell ourselves, and what becomes possible when we change how we think. So a big welcome to you, Suzy. Welcome to Hey Soul Sista. So, Suzy.
Yes.
You've had a really cool and interesting life. Tell us a bit about your experience, how you've ended up here now as an expert in success and business and life with stuckness and stories. Tell us a bit about your story.
Okay, so in the beginning.
How far do we want to go back?
That's right. I'm first generation Australian, and our stories, and I know we'll talk about those later, but our stories, the ones we inherit, are not only ours, they also come from our parents. And so my father was a refugee from Czechoslovakia, and he came to Australia in 1947, having lost 67 members of his family in the Holocaust.
Oh, my Lord.
So a traumatized human being, only child, arrives in Australia. My mother is a Kiwi, and she was also traumatized. She was dumped in boarding school at age 7 and basically left there to look after herself, and her parents would come and see her every couple of years. So she arrives in Sydney, and then two people with quite traumatic backgrounds meet, fall in love, stay married long enough to have 4 kids, and then dislike each other for the rest of their lives. So we then have our own story begins with us 4 siblings, and both my parents and my stepfather were busy out there creating careers for themselves, and we were basically left to fend for ourselves. Now, it's an interesting thing about choices and freedom. We want freedom. We want to have choice. We want to have agency in our life. But if we don't have guardrails, it's very easy to be overwhelmed by choice and not know what direction to go in. So as a young kid, without parental supervision, without religious, because we were atheists, I felt quite at sea. And
just bobbing around
in all different directions. And when I think back about how I was making decisions, I had no inner compass. I had no way of knowing what was a good decision or a right decision.
Wow.
And so I made some really bad decisions, even when I was young, with friends, like just stealing a friend or stealing a friend's boyfriend, or not paying attention in class and not doing well at class. And I remember wondering how other people do life. Like, how do you successfully create a life? And even though I could see people looking successful on the outside, what I also noticed about humans is that you can be very successful externally, but be freaking miserable internally.
The whole mask thing, right?
Really big time.
Yeah.
And I saw it with my parents, but I saw it visiting other people's homes and their parents, the secrets that people keep. And so I saw this big chasm or this contradiction between what people showed the world and what they were experiencing on the inside. So I think those things came together, and there I was trying to work out how to do life. And I realized I needed a system for life. And so I started looking for one because I felt so stuck.
Yeah. And so were you still young then?
Very young.
Yeah.
Like 16, 17. I mean, at 17, I just walked out of school. I didn't even tell my parents.
So were you aware of that? I mean, now that we're older in our
Yes.
midlife, we can reflect back and I know that you're sharing this story, but at the time, did you consciously go, I need a system to make decisions in my life, or is it just looking back now that you can see that?
I look back at life and I was lost.
Yeah.
I was just that like one of those little Tetris things that always goes bouncing into the walls in those computer games.
Yes. Like a pinball machine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it felt like doing life for me. And I was missing that progression and that momentum and having choices that were sound, that would build upon the next choice, where I got this real sense of achievement and that I was fulfilling my potential.
Yeah. It's so cool that you can look back now and identify that and see that.
Yes.
Yes. Now, I know that you've been very successful in business. So how did you then go from the pinball Tetris that's kind of bouncing around to having this successful business career?
It's a good question. It was persistence. So even though I was bouncing around and I wasn't sticking with anything in particular, I had this desire, this fire within my belly that I was going to find answers to things. And I was living over in London, and at that time I was working with my husband in a business, but decided I wanted to go off and do my own thing. So I started this fitness business over there because I would go down to the school gates with my little kids, one in each hand, and all the mothers would stand around at the school gates complaining about how their bodies had changed and how they didn't feel like themselves and their confidence was lost and after having kids. And I was like, fuck that. No, we're going to do something about it. And I opened up a fitness studio and started doing programs for women and running them at the school. So that was my first step. And it was at a time where I recognized I was still stuck, that I still wasn't fulfilling my potential. And I went off and did a personal development course when I was in London. And that was the first time that somebody told me that the voice in my head, you do have one of those?
Yes.
Yeah. That inner critic
Yeah.
was not the truth, that it was a story. And that when I heard that, and I realized that I was not, that my story was not the truth, I was like, why didn't somebody bother telling me this before? It really was a profound moment for me.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, I realized then that I had agency, that I had choice. Because if it wasn't the truth, I could take different actions and create a different story.
How cool that you had that moment.
Yes.
I remember being in my early 20s and I was at a party and I was in the hallway. There was a book stand and there was a book in there and it was a Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember flicking through it and all these concepts around the impact of emotions and stress on your body, creating disease and illness and this whole other soulful element of life. I'd never heard of such a thing. And it was a light bulb moment. It was the beginning for me of starting that personal growth, self-development journey. And you go, thank goodness we have had those moments.
So right. And they're profound, right?
Yeah.
That really is. It just, I still feel that moment in my body today, because it was the switching of direction. It was a complete change and the start of something really spectacular in life. Yeah.
So where did you go from there, having that moment and understanding, wow, there's this voice in your head?
So I said to you before that I have a fire in my belly. It's like there is something that just drives me and I want to work stuff out. And I think I often say to people, I spent the first 32 years of my life stuck, like really not understanding myself. And
How did that show up for you?
I wouldn't stick at anything. It was like I was making decisions. When I reflect back on it, I was making decisions in order to make other people happy or to look good for other people or to win somebody's love and affection or their validation. And so if my compass is always externally focused and outwardly focused, you can never get any sense of certainty, right?
Absolutely. And I think so many women will relate to that because we are kind of taught it's all about the external validation. That's what we're taught. Like, I remember that as a child. My parents, what will the neighbors think? What will other people think from a
Yeah.
young age? So, what do? You're always thinking, oh, I have to keep other people happy and I need
Yes.
their approval.
Yeah. My kids are now 25 and 27. But as a good example of that, when they were young kids and they would come home and they're like, Mom, I've got a C, okay, an A, whatever it was that they got from on the school report. Instead of saying, oh, I'm so proud of you, my first response is, how does that feel for you? What does that mean for you? What did you learn from that experience? Then I will say, I'm proud of them, because that's then building that sense of self-trust and to look inward for their own validation and love.
I love that because I'm, you know what, I'm probably the mum that went, I'm so proud of you. You got a good mark, but you're right. It's like, what does that mean for them?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we're training them always then to look to art to make us happy.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's what keeps that level of uncertainty about who you are and what's important to you. And that leads to that inner conflict, that overthinking, that self-doubt, the second guessing. That's partly because you're looking outward for that validation, sense of belonging, approval, and love rather than inward.
Suzy, you're now a coach, a speaker, you're an expert in helping people get out of their stuckness. And we've all been stuck at times, right? How does that show up for other people that you see, that you coach or that you meet?
Good question, Mel. It's funny. People often think, well, are you talking about relationships, or are you talking about career, or are you talking about people getting stuck with money? My answer is it's a internal stuckness. So you can be incredibly successful at what you do. You've got a great career, but you dislike your work. But you won't leave because your mark of success is your identity, which is connected to what you do. So you're stuck. You are successful. Not, my clients are highly successful. Everyone else would look at them and go, they've got life worked out. But there is this inner conflict. It might be somebody who's in a relationship. They look like the greatest couple in the world and they do all the great things and they're off traveling. But she can't ask for what she wants in the relationship or from that person. And when she looks inward to try and find those answers, what she hears is conflicting stories. You should just be grateful for what you have. Don't rock the boat. Don't ask for too much. And so this desire to have this blossoming, wonderful relationship where she is free to ask for what she wants, she's confined and stuck. But people wouldn't necessarily know from the outside. So those are two examples.
And because certainly there's that mask there that we all wear at different times for whatever reason. But I love that you've connected that back to the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, it is. It's part of it, Mel, because what keeps us stuck is then the question to ask yourself is, so how do I decide? How do I decide whether I pay attention to that voice which says I want more from my relationship, or the voice that says just be grateful for what you have? And I would say to people that we are entering a new era of our life or a new chapter in our life, but we're still using an outdated decision system. And that decision system, one aspect of it are these stories that we've inherited from maybe our parents, our grandparents, the school, the church, our neighborhood around us. And within those stories are ingrained rules about what's possible. And those ingrained rules become inner truths, which is why we get so stuck, because we think it's the truth.
It's like the tape recorder that has been programmed, how you think, how you see yourself, relationships, work, life, all of that. But it all does stem back often to the stories that we tell ourselves. So this is a little story that I have been grappling with. So I've started podcast recording again in May last year. I had a podcast, Hey Soul Sista, for a number of years, and then I stopped recording for a while, and then I started to record again. And I've really struggled with the social media. And this is just a little story, right? The little story. And it's been, I don't want to look like a big head. I don't want to look like I'm up myself. I'm not being soulful if I'm actually promoting the podcast episode. You know what I mean? Like all those little things.
Yeah.
And I've been consulting ChatGPT a lot about strategy around podcasting, that sort of thing. Not that ChatGPT is necessarily the expert, but no, you know what?
It's there.
It's there. Let's see what ChatGPT has to say. And it keeps saying to me, you need to be doing different little videos and snippets of yourself talking about different soulful things that relate to Hey Soul Sista. And I'm really stuck on that because the story is, oh God, that people are not really interested. And so I've been really stuck on that. But I'm aware of it. So now I'm trying to work through that. But it's interesting. This is just a little story.
Yeah. And look how we discount a story which is going to actually impact our life in a way that if you don't promote your podcast, for instance, you have less impact in the world. So if we just, but we still downplay it and go, well, what's wrong with me that I'm listening to those stories, right? So the first thing is to listen to the story. And then the second part is to accept that the story isn't true. So if I ask you, are you being up yourself by...
It's such an Aussie term, up myself.
Are you being, it's the whole tall poppy syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Are you being up yourself? But are you being egotistical, whatever those things are in your head?
Yeah.
So is that true?
Well, when I rationally think about it, I go, no, it's not. I'm actually just want to share this information with people. Because for me, it's been a game changer.
That's right.
I want to share that with people.
So then at least when you can see that the story isn't the truth and you put an alternate story there, you now provide yourself something which is important, which is choice. And if we know what we know about habits is that in the moment that you start choosing a different habit, you start rewiring your brain so that over time, that story is the one that comes to the forefront and the other one takes a back seat. But it takes time. And as I say to people, the most important work once we can identify our stories, identify the ingrained rules and beliefs at the core of those stories, is to understand that you've got to the core of it. The rest is just boring practice. I'm sorry. It's just like, I wish I could go to the gym once and be fit for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Oh, I realize if I do bicep curls, I'm going to get great biceps. Great. That's enough to have fab biceps for the rest of my life. Not.
Yeah.
The practice is that every time you hear that story, you intercept it. So it's accept the story, accept that it is a story, intercept it. And then the next part, and this is super important, and I've done so many people have done my program who have been to counseling, therapy, most of them. And the part that I think that gets missed in therapy is so important to an updated decision system is what are you going to anchor to give you the courage and the confidence to make a different decision. And that is, you see, you need something to replace it. You know how when they would teach people how to give up cigarettes?
Yes.
And they'd say, that's leaving a gaping hole in your life where you used to smoke. You need to fill it with something else.
Yes.
Okay. So in the place of that story which says, don't be, what's the Aussie term? Don't be, what do we
Don't be a tosser. Don't be a
no, we just,
a wanker.
no, we said, don't get too big for yourself.
Like a big head.
Yeah.
She's not just up yourself.
That's right. Don't be so up yourself.
Yeah.
So this is where,
Any Americans listening? Because there are a number of Americans that actually do listen to this and be like, what the hell are these Aussies on about? Up yourself.
it's all right. You'll recognize the term when you come to Australia and visit us.
Yeah.
So the next part is values, right? So once you've identified the story, you've intercepted it, you need to anchor to something. And if I asked you, what are the principles by which you live by? Like, what are the things that you want to align yourself to as principles? So if I give you my example, my highest values are growth, connection, freedom, and justice. If I had that thought about, I'm just being up myself, I would align to freedom, and that freedom is emotional and mental freedom. And so if I align to and anchor to that value, and then it's the training of my thoughts and my feelings and my actions to that value, then I've got something really solid to work from. Does that make sense? Have I explained that well enough?
No, it makes total sense.
Right.
It makes total sense. And it's interesting because you talked about values as well. That's something I've been really, really considering the last 12 months to actually live in alignment.
Yeah.
And how important that is.
Yes.
Because I realised that I had just been bouncing around through life without actually being considered and going, who am I? What do I stand for? What do I believe in? And really being considered around that.
And Mel, I think you are, I think the reason that I had to do that at an earlier age was because I had nothing in my bag of tricks.
Yeah.
Which is why I created that Unstuck decision-making system, right? Because I didn't have those guides. But what I know from so many clients who have, as I said, done the therapy side, is the values, purpose, and goals, and using those as your inner compass, which is so clearly defined. It gives you this anchor. So you start rebuilding your story with those things as the foundation.
So tell us about your system and some examples of how any woman could do this to get out of their stuckness or their stories and live with the freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I had a client ring me last night and she chose to leave her partner. And you can imagine that that's a big decision.
It's a massive decision.
Massive.
Yeah.
And there are so many things, if you think about what's going on in a woman's head, right? Do you remember that movie with Mel Gibson, What Women Want?
Yeah. It's hilarious. Yeah.
It's true. We live really complex lives. We have lots of competing priorities. 50 years ago, we were doing one thing. Most women were doing one thing, raising kids. Now we're raising kids, we're raising grandkids, we're working, we're responsible for health, we're responsible for wealth. We want to look good, we want to have a fabulous body, we want to be, emotionally smart.
The bar has been set up here now, hasn't it?
It is just, and it goes on.
I keep looking at J-Lo.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the life has got complex. How do we prioritize these things? So she rang me. Now she's done my programs. And I always say to people, if you ever get stuck, once you've done my program, call me. I'll get you unstuck in 15 minutes because there'll be just something that they're unable to see. So how does she know she's made the right decision? She goes to her values, she goes to her purpose, and she goes to her goals.
Values, purpose, goals.
Goals.
Yeah.
We need to make sure those three things align. So if one of your highest values is peace, but you're going into a high-risk business, you've got something which can potentially create conflict. Yeah. So you want to look for that consistency along all three. But she was able to tell me that her highest values are freedom, but growth being the most important one. And the reason she was leaving her partner was because for the past couple of years, they've been having arguments and she's asking to be heard and to be understood. And he's quite rigid in the way he thinks and he's dismissive. And so she's asking him to expand the way he hears and sees her. And he is either choosing not to or can't, one or the other. And so over those 2 years, she's now made the decision that he's not going to change. And so she's going to be living in conflict with one of her highest values, which is growth. That's growth for him, growth for her. And so having that cycle on repeat for 2 years, she makes the decision not, so she makes it from her place of values. And in doing that, she lives with the certainty that she is aligned and congruent. And that is a definition of success, which I think people are underestimate.
Yeah.
So if you think about how much things like imposter syndrome tear at women's confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
And so if you think, oh, but I can feel alignment and congruency if I'm so clear on what my values are and I teach myself to align my thoughts, feelings and actions to them, there you've got integrity and authenticity right there.
Yeah. And how good does authenticity feel?
Ah, it is the greatest freedom there is. So
Absolutely.
I think it's a metric of success which is underestimated by people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually talking on authenticity, is that something that you've had to grow within yourself as well?
So I would say authenticity is the result of a decision system.
Yeah.
So and it's not perfect, right? I'm not looking for perfection, but if I know what my values are and I'm making decisions aligned with those values, I get authenticity. That is the result of the system that I use to choose. Yeah. So I'm not giving into my fear. I'm not giving into what other people think. I'm not giving into what is the accepted way of doing things. No, I go within, and my alignment is about how I feel on the inside, how I look on the outside, as in, how I'm experiencing life, and those things matching. Mm. And that's a sum total of those things that deliver authenticity.
And that's a good life.
That's a freaking great life.
It's a great life. Yeah. Because when you're not living in alignment, when you're not being authentic and true to yourself, it feels awful.
Shit.
It feels shitty.
It feels like shit.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going through something over the last few months and I needed to make a decision about something. And I really noticed, probably not for the first time in my life, but I really noticed because I was very clear on my values now and I'm very clear on my on self-trust and trusting myself, which when I was younger, I realized I didn't have. I actually didn't really trust myself and my own decisions. And I was looking externally to other people to make those decisions for me.
You were taught that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so because I've been doing all this inner work, which, if you listen to Hey Soul Sista, you hear me bang on about the inner work all the time, but it's so important. And anyway, so I've been going through this thing and this decision that I had to make. And I made it and have felt so good about it because I was like, it's actually in line with my values. It's in line with who I am, what I believe. And I trust myself to actually go, no, this is the right way. And it feels unreal. And I realize that you or other people might go, do you know what? I do that all the time. But for me, growing up and being taught that it's all around external validation and keeping other people happy, like that has been a huge thing.
So let me ask you, how is the noise in your head having made that decision?
Oh, do you know what? It's clear.
Yeah.
It's clear. Clarity, right?
That's clarity.
Yeah.
Peace.
Space.
Spaciousness. You've got actually time to think about other things which are around creativity or family or love or relationships rather than this looping, second guessing, this sense that something's wrong. There's an inner conflict there because you were going to make a decision that could have been about making other people happy while sacrificing yourself
Yeah.
and your values.
And interestingly, somebody was not happy with my decision, and that was hard. But at the end of the day, I knew it was the right thing for me. And the great thing is that this person is a good friend, so we could have a conversation around that, which was unreal. That was unreal to be able to go, that's another Aussie term. Unreal.
I think, but you know what, Mel? I think that you actually come to the second point about it, which is you were able to make that decision and you were able to communicate it with confidence. And what happens is when we've been when our inherited stories with all these inherited rules about what you can and can't do and what you should wear and how you should look and how you should sound and all those sorts of things, what's possible for women and what's possible for all of that stuff. And we learn to communicate, trying to justify and reason and excuse and make sure that we're not rocking the boat and everyone's happy. When you make a decision from this newer place, this more authentic place, with that comes learning how to communicate. So they're different words. There's different energy in the language you use to explain yourself. Did you notice that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's interesting. So you were asking about examples. So I'll give you a great example of an inherited story if we've got time.
Yeah, we do.
So this is a client of mine. I think it is a really good example. She has this luxury travel business, which she has had since she was 16. She loves. She travels the world. I mean, it's amazing, right? And she'd been seeing me for a while. That was more when I was doing business coaching. Yeah. She turned up one day and she said, Suzy, I am going to roll back my business. I was like, oh, interesting. For someone who loves your business, let's sit down and work out what's going on. And she's a Kiwi and she grew up with a mother who was a domestic goddess and was at home and would talk all the time about how a woman's work was in the home and how much she loved being in the kitchen and that her dad was always out. And so my client never saw her dad around. And so when she was making this decision about winding down her business, what had happened was her husband had said to her, I don't think you're spending enough time with the kids. Now, my client doesn't believe for one moment that a woman's work is in the home. But her conscious wise self sitting across from me that day is actually not the person making the decision to wind back the business. The person is her 5-year-old version of herself who inherited that story and has been inhabiting that story for the 40 years ever since. And remember, we talked about belonging and safety?
Yep.
And so she's making that decision in order to belong and to feel safe. And because on some level, she still believes that story to be true. Yeah. And it would continue to run her life until we bring it to the surface. And she goes, well, that's a load of hogwash. I'm not living my life like that. And then continues on with her business.
That's a great example of the story and the impact.
Yeah.
That it can have. And we've all got the stories. It's just uncovering them and how they're playing in the background there, whispering away.
Yeah. Look, one of mine was I don't belong. And that was because I had these crazy parents from, different parts of the world. And I grew up in the 1970s in Australia, very white, very vanilla. And, my dad sounded like a wog and my mum was, my parents were divorced, all these things which made me feel like an outsider. And I also come from a family of very smart people, all academic. And so I also had this little worry in the side of my head, which was really smart enough. And those two things in various forms kept me very stuck.
Yeah. Which is crazy because you're amazing.
Thanks, Mel.
Yes. Do you have a soulful practice or something like that to keep you grounded while you're off serving the world and helping women and doing wonderful work in the world, giving? Do you have anything there, like a soulful or daily practice that you do to nurture yourself?
So I eat well, I stay active. I am quite spontaneous. So I like being able to change my routines up. So I always say to people, have a toolkit of things. Because sometimes you feel like activity, sometimes you feel like quiet time. Some of my go-to So rituals are around walking with no podcasts and just allowing my mind to process, because that's when I know that my mind works best, when I'm moving. The second one is something called morning pages. Do you know morning pages? Oh my God. I love this more than anything.
I'm excited to hear this.
So you wake up first thing in the morning when your mind has been processing, because remember, your conscious mind can only process 45 bits of information per second. Your unconscious, 11 million bits of information per second. So there's a whole lot of things that you don't know that you know back there. So you wake up first thing in the morning, set your alarm for 20 minutes, pen and paper, and you just start writing.
Yeah.
Not a diary, not a journal, just stream of consciousness writing. You will be surprised what comes out.
Yeah, morning pages.
Morning pages, it's a way to release emotion. It's a way to clear the garbage dump, which can sometimes accumulate in your head. It is a great way to work out problems, to take ownership of stuff in your life. So morning pages, definitely in my toolbox. If ever I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed, that would definitely be the one I turn to, which is morning pages. Then there are things, simple things like block breathing, 4 in, 4 out, relaxation of the shoulders. And then there's a very useful tool, which is the be, do, have model of being present, which I won't go into now, but people can, maybe if we can put it in show
do,
notes.
have, yep.
Which is being able to create your experience of life so you're not just at the effect of life.
Yeah.
So they're probably my top 3 that I rely on.
Oh, thanks, Suzy. Now, where can people find out more about you and your work?
They could probably go to LinkedIn is the best place. So Suzy Jacobs on LinkedIn, that's where I publish most of my thought leadership.
Yeah.
I don't have a podcast. I used to once upon a time.
You might have one again.
I might do. I might have one again. So LinkedIn, or I've got a website, suzyjacobs.com, but LinkedIn is where I operate most of the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing this awesome work in the world, because I know myself and many of my friends and people, listeners and out there would all be able to connect with the stuckness and the stories. We've all experienced that many times in our lives, I'm sure. But what we want is freedom and to live a joyful, soulful life.
Yeah, 100%.
Yay. Thanks. Oh, and you've got a website too, Suzy Jacobs.
Yeah, suzyjacobs.com.
Perfect.
Yep. Thanks, Mel. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Suzy.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah.